at the Embassy of Canada in Washington, D.C. And thank you for joining me here for this presentation. I'd also like to thank Kansas University for hosting. This is a great turnout, and thank you for attending. So today I'm going to talk to you about immigrating to Canada through Express Entry. Express Entry is our online management system for the majority of our economic class programs. And if you immigrate to Canada through Express Entry, you would become a permanent resident of Canada. You would have almost the same rights and privileges and obligations as Canadian citizen, and permanent residents of Canada are able to sponsor their spouse, their children, and we even have a small program for sponsoring parents. And after residing in Canada for 3 years, you can apply for citizenship. So I'm just going to share my screen where I'm going to have a PowerPoint presentation. Throughout the presentation, you can type in questions in the chat. I'm not going to be able to see them at the end, and so I'll address all your questions at the end of the presentation. So 1 second here. Okay. So Canada welcomes immigration. This is reflected by our managed migration program. Every year, our Parliament sets immigration levels for the year, with targets increasing every year. So for 2020, our target was 340,000 new immigrants to Canada. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, we will not quite make that target, but we are still working towards it. And for 2021, our target is going to be 350,000 new immigrants to Canada. So as you can see, a portion of the total target is reserved for family sponsorship. Another portion is for our overseas refugee resettlement program, but the vast majority, over 195,000 visas, are reserved for economic class immigrants. These are people that have the skills, the education, and the experience that are proven to contribute to a successful future in Canada. So the majority of our immigration economic class programs are managed through Express Entry. One notable exception, if you want to immigrate to the province of Quebec, you'll need to go through a paper application process. And the first step is to apply to the province of Quebec, and that's on their provincial website. Back to Express Entry, there are 3 main steps in Express Entry. The first step is to determine your eligibility via one of the 3 economic class programs available. The second step is when you create your Express Entry profile and you enter the Express Entry pool. And there you're ranked against all the individuals in the pool. Step 3 is when you receive an invitation to apply for permanent residence and you complete the entire application process. So to be eligible to immigrate to Canada through Express Entry, you must meet one of the requirements of a preliminary program before you're allowed to create your Express Entry profile. There are 3 programs. The Canadian Experience class, as the name suggests, requires at least 1 year skilled work experience in Canada. And I'll talk a little bit about this program towards the end of the presentation. The Federal Skilled Trades program is for people who are currently working in skilled trades and either have a trade certificate or from Canada or have a job offer from an employer in Canada. So that leaves the Federal Skilled Worker Program, which I believe the majority of you would be able to create a profile under Express Entry. So the Federal Skilled Worker Program, to qualify, you must have at a minimum 1 year of full-time paid skilled work experience within the last 10 years, or the equivalent experience over a 2-year period. So that's 1,560 hours. That experience can be obtained anywhere in the world, and it must be in one occupation, although it can be in multiple positions. And no skilled work experience in Canada is required. You also must meet a minimum language ability in one of Canada's official languages, so either French or English. In addition to meeting the minimum requirements, we have a point system, and you must gain a minimum of 67 points out of a possible 100 points. So the Express Entry online tool, I believe that with the registration, you all received a handout that has links to the Government of Canada website. This tool is on that handout. This tool will calculate your points for you, but to give you an idea, if you qualify, I'll describe how the points are awarded. So for age, there's a maximum of 12 points awarded for being between the ages of 18 and 35, and points decrease after that. For education, you gain a maximum of 25 points, for a PhD, 23 points for a master's, and 21 for a bachelor's. For skilled work experience, you gain for 1 year of work experience, 9 points, for 2 to 3, 11 points, and for 4 to 5 years, 13 points, and 6 years, you would gain the maximum of 15 points. For adaptability, there's a maximum of 10 points here. These are awarded for external positives, such as if you have a spouse or a common law partner who's coming with you to Canada, your spouse or your partner's abilities in English or French, or if you or your spouse have certain relatives living in Canada, or if you or your partner have previous work or study experience in Canada. Arranged employment can give you 10 points plus an additional 5 points for adaptability if you have not met the maximum points for adaptability. So arranged employment is when you have a job offer from a Canadian employer and that employer has gotten the job offer approved with the Canadian government. And that this approval is something that your prospective employer would apply for. Language skills. So you can gain a maximum of 28 points for your language skills, 24 points for your first official language, and 4 additional points for your second official language. And to gain points for language skills, you must undergo objective testing. Everyone must do this regardless of their native language. So for English, the accepted tests are the IELTS, the International English Language Testing System, and CELPIP, which is the Canadian English Language Proficiency Index Program. For French, it's the TCF, the Test de Connaissance du Français, and the TEF, le Test d'Évaluation de Français. So after entering your information, the Express Entry system will inform you if you have met the skilled worker requirements. If you have, you'll receive a personal reference code, which you can then use to create your full Express Entry profile. However, if after entering your data, you do not receive a reference code, don't be disheartened. This means that you need to consider how you can improve your points, such as improving your language abilities, furthering your studies, or obtaining more work experience. So let's look at a concrete example. So here, this individual gained 12 points for being between the ages of 18 and 35, 23 points for having completed a master's degree, 9 points for 1 year of work experience, and 17 points for English language ability. Now, this person only obtained 61 points, so this person would not qualify for immigration at this time. However, in 1 year's time, this person gained another 2 points for work experience and then improved their language skills. And this brought these additional points brought this person up to the 67-point minimum. So once you have met the program requirements, you can create your Express Entry profile and enter the Express Entry pool. So now this is where this process gets a bit complicated, because once you enter the Express Entry pool, there's an entirely new point system for calculating your rank in the pool. This is the Comprehensive Ranking System, or CRS, and it uses the information you've already entered, such as your age, your education, and your work experience, and other factors to create your Express Entry CRS score. So in the pool, the total number of points is now 1,200. There are 600 points for core or human capital factors and 600 points for additional factors. As you can see, many of the core factors, such as your age, your education, your language proficiency, work experience, are the same as in the Federal Skilled Workers Program, but graded differently. And if you are married or if you have a common law partner who will be accompanying you to Canada, your partner's factors will contribute to your score. So the skilled transferability score is a combination of certain background factors, such as your level of education and your language proficiency, or your work experience and your language proficiency. There are also points given to additional factors, such as having a sibling who resides in Canada and is a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen, or if you have abilities in French. As you can see, there's a great amount of positive weight given for Canadian education or work experience. And you will also see your score rise if you have an improved job offer from a Canadian employer in Canada. So if you have arranged employment, that you would gain 200 points for an executive level position or 50 points for middle management or skilled work position. You also would gain 600 points for a provincial nomination, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Your profile remains active in the pool for 1 year. In that year, if you gain more work experience or you improve your language abilities or other circumstances in your life change, such as you get married, we encourage you to update your profile. As your points increase, your chance of meeting the invitation threshold increases. And after 1 year, if you have not been invited to apply for permanent residence, you can recreate your profile and re-enter the pool. There's no charge for creating an express entry profile. So your CRS score is the determining factor in whether you will be invited to apply for permanent residence. At regular intervals, usually once every 2 weeks, the top ranking candidates, those with a score above a certain threshold, are issued an invitation to apply for permanent residency. So I didn't include the rounds of invitations after January 2020, because at that point, with our COVID-19 response, they're a bit atypical. From about March onwards, we have focused on inviting people who actually reside in Canada to complete the process. But recently we have commenced inviting people from all programs around the world to apply for immigration. The most recent CRS score was 471 for the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So there's a tool on our website. This is to help you calculate your CRS score. And that link is on our the handout we provided. So here's a concrete example. This person is 30 years old, has a master's degree, a high level of English, 2 years of work experience outside of Canada, and this person would obtain 451 points. Now, this may be sufficient for this person to obtain an invitation to apply for immigration sometime during the year, but as I mentioned, the most recent round of invitations was issued for people with a score of 471 and above. So this person might want to consider how they can improve their score. Some ways to increase your CRS score include improving your language capacities in English and French, gaining more skilled work experience, completing additional studies, be nominated for immigration by a province for an additional 600 points, or find an employer in Canada who's willing to sponsor you for a government-approved job offer. So let's just take a moment to recap what we've covered. At the first step, you are required to meet the eligibility requirements of one of the 3 economic class programs. For federal skilled workers, this means obtaining a minimum of 67 points to be eligible for express entry. Once you reach the 67-point threshold, you then enter the second step where you enter the pool and you're ranked and rescored amongst the pool of all eligible candidates. Now let's discuss what happens if you are chosen from the Express Entry pool and receive an invitation to apply. So normally you are given 60 days to submit an application. I believe at this moment it's been extended for 90 days, given that it can be a little more challenging to get all the documentation required, but double check on your invitation to apply what the deadline is. 60 days is a very short period of time to obtain all the documentation that you are going to need to support the points that have been awarded to you. So we encourage you to start acquiring some of this documentation when you're thinking about creating your Express Entry profile. Some of the documents you're going to need to obtain include an education equivalency, police certificates, a medical exam, proof of funds, and language test results. Also at this point, there's an application fee, which is $1,325 Canadian per adult and $225 per child. And you'll need to provide biometrics, which cost $85 per person at this time. So let's talk about some of the documents you're going to need. First is an education credential assessment. We require that all non-Canadian education degrees are assessed by an approved third-party agency. This is so that we know that your degree is equivalent to a Canadian one, and it's a requirement for everyone, regardless of where you've studied, just to give this transparency and level of confidence in our immigration programs. So you only need to have your highest diploma assessed, though. Police certificates. You'll need to submit valid police certificates from any country in which you have lived for 6 months or more since reaching the age of 18. And the police certificate from the country in which you currently live needs to be at least less than 6 months old when you submit your completed application. So for most of you, that will be the FBI certificate. Medical examination. You need to undergo an immigration medical exam when you submit a completed application. When you receive your invitation to apply, we will be sending you a medical form that you present to a doctor that's been authorized by the Government of Canada to perform these examinations. Another requirement is proof of unencumbered funds. So a single person must show 13,000 Canadian, which is about 10,000 US at the current exchange rate. A family of 2 must have 16,000 Canadian, and a family of 3 must demonstrate 20,000 Canadian. And this requirement is for very practical reasons. You can go through this entire process without having a job offer, without having ever visited Canada. So you need funds to help you establish in Canada. And language tests results. Now, I mentioned the language test results before. Just one final note, the results need to be less than 2 years old when you submit your completed application. So as I mentioned earlier, timing is something to consider. You need to provide quite a lot of documentation, and 60 days is a short period of time to get some of these documents, such as the police certificates. Once we receive your completed application, an immigration officer will verify that the information you provided is true, and they'll assess whether you're admissible to Canada based on the results of your medical examination and your police certificates. After that, you'll receive a visa to travel to Canada and to finalize your permanent residency. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, you can also qualify under Express Entry through the Canadian Experience class if you have 1 year or more of work experience in Canada in the last 3 years. There's also a minimum requirement for language proficiency in either English or French. So there are a few different ways of obtaining work experience in Canada through a work permit. If you further studies in Canada, after you graduate, you would be eligible for a postgraduate work permit, which is valid for up to 3 years, depending on the length of your program of study. You can also apply for a work permit through a few other programs. If you are employed by a US company that has operations in Canada, you can request your employer to transfer you to Canada. Or you can find a Canadian employer that is willing to sponsor you for a government-approved job offer. Once your employer has that approval, they would direct you to complete the work permit application, which is on our website, and there's a link on our handout as well. And all you have to do to demonstrate that you meet the qualifications of the work permit is to provide documentation that support that you have the qualifications for the position. There are a few other programs where you can get a work permit. If your language of habitual use is French, there's a program for those who wish to work outside of Quebec in a Francophone minority community. Also, there's a program for young people called the International Experience Canada. It's kind of like a working holiday program, and it's based on bilateral agreements that we have with different countries. So you would have to go on our website and explore the details of that program. Now, if you get a work permit and you are working in a skilled position, your spouse or your partner, if you have one, is then eligible for open work permit, which means that they could work in any field or in any position. Earlier, I also mentioned the provincial nominee program, and receiving a nomination would give you 600 CRS points and guarantee that you're drawn from the express entry pool. So the provinces and territories are active partners in Canada's immigration program. The provinces are interested in finding workers that meet local labor needs, and they routinely review the express entry pool. Applicants can also apply directly to the provinces if they're interested in living in a particular province. So if you know that you are interested in living in a particular province, go and explore the provincial nomination programs that are available. Each province's programs are different, so you have to consult the provincial website for the details. And why would you want to move to Canada? Well, Canada is one of the most multicultural and diverse countries in the world. Toronto, for example, the city where I grew up, 51% of the population was born outside of Canada, so they are all immigrants. Canada also has the second highest standard of living in the G20 as measured by GDP per capita, and is the most highly educated population of all the OECD countries. We have a strong and stable economy and a high quality of life. We have things such as universal health care. I've never paid for a doctor's visit inside of Canada. And in general, Canada has a very open and accepting society. Canada sees immigration as an important contributing factor to the success of our economy and our communities. So I think in Canada is a great place to live, work, and raise a family. However, migrating to a new country is a huge decision, so I encourage you to do your own research and see if this is the right decision for you. Now, I know that probably the most important consideration for you are job opportunities. So while I'm not a specialist in this area, I've gathered a few resources to start you off so that you can learn a little bit more about the Canadian labour market. So the first is a Government of Canada website called Job Bank. Now, there are jobs listed on this website, but it's also better known for its information on the Canadian labour market. Under the Trends Analysis tab, you can look up job outlooks by regional employment prospects by occupation, and you can also explore key industry profiles for an overview of recent regional labour market developments. The Government of Canada website also has a section on how to start a business in Canada. Now, there's another website produced by the Government of Canada called Invest in Canada, and this website is geared towards foreign companies that want to expand in Canada. However, the Industries tab will give you the highlights of Canada's major industries, including some of the major companies operating in these fields and recent trends and developments. There's also a locations tab, which will link you to provincial and city websites that have some of the same information at a local level. The Startup Genome analyzes startup ecosystems and has identified 8 Canadian cities or regions as having important startup ecosystems. I'll just go over this briefly. The Toronto Waterloo Corridor has the second largest technology cluster in North America and is the world's fastest growing innovation hub. So tech jobs in Toronto increased 85% in the last 5 years. Toronto is also North America's second largest financial services hub. It has a large health services and research hub called the Discovery District. And Southern Ontario has a rich history in manufacturing, including next generation advanced manufacturing firms. Montreal has the third largest ecosystem for aerospace in the world. It's also a leading artificial intelligence hub and has advanced manufacturing and robotics ecosystem. It is also the center of the Canadian gaming industry. Vancouver is known for its clean tech companies, blockchain. It has the leading digital entertainment cluster and has a strong life sciences and gaming sector. Ottawa has a number of organizations that leverage big data for products and services, including Shopify or FinTrack. It's also known for artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. Edmonton has strengths in artificial intelligence and has a strong health and life sciences sector. Nearby Calgary, this is the corporate headquarters of Canada's energy sector. It also has a clean tech ecosystem and is a leader in health sciences. Quebec City has a globally renowned gaming industry and a very strong artificial intelligence and life sciences industry. And recently, Halifax and Atlantic Canada region has been identified as an emerging high growth ecosystem, and they feature life sciences and marine tech. So I often get asked what are the in-demand jobs in Canada. Randstad, a large private company, recently released a list of the best jobs. These are a mixture of high skilled and low skilled positions are in demand. IT has been recognized as Canada's fastest growing industry, and their jobs remain in demand even now. Engineering is in demand. Financial advisor and accountant was on the list, as well as business development manager, HR manager, merchandiser, and registered nurse. And if you want to start, you're looking for particular jobs, websites such as Indeed Canada, Glassdoor Canada, or Monster.ca can help you as well. So if you're motivated by what Canada has to offer you and your family, I encourage you to create an Express Entry profile. And I'm sure that many of you would be eligible now to immigrate or shortly in the future and to create a successful home in Canada. So now I'd like to turn it over to your questions. Just a second and I'll switch over. Okay. So please enter your questions in the chat. Okay, I'm not sure how to scroll through the questions. I see 1.5 so far. The first one is, would you consider a graduate school offer from a Canadian school as a job offer in Canada for this process? So if this is skilled employment, a graduate school offer, I assume that this is a job instead of you would be working for the graduate school. If so, yes, that would be a qualifying job offer. If your employer goes through the process of gaining approval from the Canadian government. So in most cases, the employer will have to apply for something called a labor. Okay, this is now as a student. But if you have a job offer, in most cases, your employer will have to apply for a labor market impact assessment. There are some exceptions. Once they have that, then that would be a qualifying job offer. If you are going to study in Canada as a graduate student, that would not be considered employment. However, at the end of your studies, you would qualify for a postgraduate work permit and can work temporarily in Canada and then later apply for permanent residency. Plus any work experience that you would gain as a graduate student, such as a teaching assistant or research assistant, that would qualify as skilled work experience. So Tracy, I'm having some problems with the chat.
Yes.
The questions are coming and going.
I'll bring some of them up. So I'm going to start at the beginning. Can you see it on the screen now?
Okay. If you
On
have
the main
cases,
screen?
if you have UK citizenship, does it make it easier to gain permanent residency in Canada? No, we treat all countries and all citizenships the same. Now, it may be easier for you to score a high score on your English language exam, but there's no special points awarded for being a US citizen or a UK citizen or from any other country. Okay. Hello, I'm an international PhD student in the humanities, and I'm currently teaching foreign languages at U of... I can't scroll through this.
Let me finish. I'll read the whole thing. At University of Kansas, my non-American spouse has a BA degree and employment experience in land surveying construction. Based on our professional background, who do you think should be a primary applicant when applying for express entry?
To get the points needed, you're going to have to get educational credential assessment and language testing for both of you. So you can both submit a profile. There's no cost for creating a profile. And then the person with the highest points is going to be the person that is invited to immigrate first. So you don't have to decide initially who's going to be the primary applicant. If you both submit a profile, then you can then compare what your points would be. Because the working experience must be in a certain category when calculating the points. So work experience needs to be skilled, and there's something that the Government of Canada has called a National Occupational Classification System. So there is a link to that on the handout provided. If you go to the National Occupational Classification System, you can search by occupation, and you'll need to find the occupation code. And the codes, there's a chart that tells you whether a code is either a National Occupation Code O, which is managerial, A, which is professional, or B, which is skilled. And then we also have C and D. C and D are lower skilled positions and do not qualify. So you would need to have a position that has a classification of an O, A, or B. That's considered skilled. So it doesn't matter what your particular job is. It just matters what skill level. Would you know if a graduate research assistant as a PhD student counts as work experience? Yes, it does. And that is considered skilled work experience. Okay, does a graduate student assistantship count as work experience? Yes. Yes. Can a 5-year PhD?
Here, I'll read this one. In a 5-year PhD student with GTA position, so working 20 hours per week, annual basis contract, excluding summer breaks paid by the university, be treated as work experience in Canada Express entry?
Yes, it does. For the minimum requirements under the Federal Skilled Worker, you have to have 1,560 hours in one occupation over a 2-year period. So that would be 15 hours per week for the full year. So you would have to make sure that you have the minimum of 1,560 hours within a 2-year period. And then any additional work experience would then increase your points. Okay. So, and there's another question, that if part-time work experience counts. It does. However, it needs to be, for the minimum requirements, 1,560 hours over a two-year period. Is there a tool to estimate the eligibility points? Yes, there is. And I had it on screen, so it would be similar to what you saw before. And there's the link. It's in the handout that we sent to you. Okay. Whether you're not chosen depends on your score. Right. It's not the same as a lottery. No, it's not the same as a lottery. So you have your CRS score, and then every few weeks, in order for the Government of Canada to obtain its target of about 200,000 skilled workers, we then issue invitations to apply to the top ranking individuals above a certain threshold. So if 1 week we're issuing 300, or in 1 week if we're issuing 3,000 invitations, then the top 3,000 people would be issued an invitation to apply. So it's not a lottery, it's based on your score. Okay. There's another question I see. If you're applying as a PhD student, do you select that you have a PhD qualifications? Now, you must have actually obtained the degree before you can claim the points for it. So if you're a PhD student, you can qualify with your master's degree, and then once you gain your PhD, you would want to go into your profile and update that, but you have to have gained the qualification first. Here's another question. How does a PhD versus an MA degree change the points? So under the Federal Skilled Workers Program, the points would increase by 2. The points issued under express entry, the CRS points, would also increase, but I do not have the exact figure for that. Let's see. Is being an undergrad research program for more than a year considered work experience? So this research program, it doesn't say whether it's paid work, but it must be paid work experience for it to qualify. Everything on step 1 and 2 would be free, right? Yes. So it's only when you're at the last stage, when you are submitting the complete application, when we've already determined that the information you've given us indicates that you qualify. So that's the only time that you would pay a fee. How many funds do you need to prove for the application? So for one person, you would need 13,000 Canadian, or that's about $10,000 US. And these funds are not for the Government of Canada. These funds are for you to help you establish when you come to Canada.
I'm going to read this question. I am a PhD student in the political science department. Does holding a UN refugee travel document affect application?
No, it would not. You're applying to establish permanently in Canada, so it doesn't matter what travel document you have. We would consider that as appropriate. Can my spouse and I create different profiles in Express Entry to increase our chances? Yes, you can, but when you're issued an invitation to apply, it would be best if one of you decides to be the principal applicant and the other person as a dependent, because we need to process both of you on the same application anyways. So if you continue with 2 separate applications, you're going to end up paying more fees, basically. I have not finished my PhD. Do I need to get an ECA for it to improve my points? No. So you will not get any points for your PhD until you've completed the PhD. So wait until you've completed it, and then you need to get your ECA and then add it to your profile, and that will increase your points. Is the CEC program also inside Express Entry? Yes, it is. So everyone should do the steps 1 and 2. Yes. The thing with the Canadian Experience class, it's actually an easier program to get through. All you need to have is 1 year of work experience in Canada in the last 3, and then minimum language abilities. So, and then the work experience that you have in Canada would increase your CRS score quite a bit. Plus, you may already have an employer, so you might have approved employment. So it's a bit, if you're in Canada working, it's a little bit easier to get through than the Federal Skilled Worker Program. But if you're not in Canada and you don't have Canadian work experience, then the Federal Skilled Worker Program is the one to go through. If you qualify under both programs, Express Entry will enter you under both. Do we need to contact the provinces directly for provincial nominee program? So the provinces could contact you if you have expressed interest in living in the province in that province, and if you have what they're looking for. But each province does have programs that you can apply to directly, so you would want to explore those on their website. So yes, you should, if you're interested in living in a particular province, explore their website first. Okay. I'm finishing my bachelor's degree. However, I don't have any full-time, it cuts off there.
Full-time work experience. Am I qualified to apply to the Express Entry?
So you need to have at least 1,560 hours of skilled work experience in one occupation over a 2-year period. So you have to have that 1 year of work experience or the equivalent part-time over 2 years in order to start. And it doesn't have to be in the same position or with the same employer, but in the same occupation. So if you have multiple positions as a teaching assistant, those can all add up to 1 year of work experience.
You want to read this one? For someone in contact, if a Canadian company and in the middle, must be with a Canadian company, and in the middle of their selection process, does the person have to apply for the Express Entry, or the work permit is through another process?
Okay, so if the Canadian company hires you and they get the approval from the Canadian government, then they would direct you to apply for a work permit. The application is on our website, and there's links to it on the handout, and it's fairly straightforward. However, if you want to apply to immigrate permanently to Canada, then you would need to go through Express Entry. So you could either do so upfront, or you can wait until you have the Canadian work experience, which would increase your point score considerably and make it more likely that you're issued an invitation to apply. So yeah.
Okay, this next one has multiple parts. I am 32 years old. I completed PhD in 2017 and have 3 more years skilled working experience in KU, United States, postdoctoral researcher, with 3 questions. Here's the first one. Is there any restriction for 5 years post PhD for getting any job offer as postdoctoral researcher in Canada?
So it would be the employer that would determine the eligibility, not Immigration Canada. So I do not know if there's any restrictions on that.
Okay, then this one we would probably have.
Okay. Are there any other options to get a job offer in Canada which don't have any restrictions? So the way that you get approval for, your employer would get approval from the Canadian government can vary depending on the type of position. We have the labor market impact assessment process where the employer would submit the proposal to bring in a temporary foreign worker, and the government of Canada assesses whether that position would have a positive or negative impact on the Canadian labor market. And they also assess the employer to make sure the employer has the ability to employ a temporary foreign worker, and that Canadian labor standards are going to be respected. However, certain types of jobs are covered under international agreements, and also certain types of jobs are in so much demand that your employer does not have to submit a labor market impact assessment application, and would just have to submit the job offer and a small compliance fee to Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, and then we would ensure that the job offer meets Canadian standards. So that's a little bit quicker, but either way, the employer needs to get approval.
And here is the third part to the question.
What is the minimum job offer period required to get the points? So if you have a qualifying job offer, it needs to be for at least 1 year. Okay, stepbrother is a Canadian citizen. Can that work as a sibling for points? I would have to look at the, I would have to look at the language of our Immigration Act to determine that one. It may, I'm sorry, I'd have to get back to you about that one. Would you consider a graduate school offer from a Canadian school as a job offer? If you are offered a position to study, that is not considered employment. You have to have paid employment. Can you apply for jobs without having previous job permit? Yes, you can apply for jobs. You don't have to have a permit beforehand. Your employer would then help you obtain the job, the work permit.
Okay, this one's a long one. I'm an undergrad student. My sister is studying strategic communication in undergrad as well and is interested in immigrating to Canada after school. She is wondering if she would have to get some work experience here in America first. Also, just to clarify, internships don't count, right?
Internships can count if they're paid work experience. And your work experience can be acquired anywhere in the world. It does not have to be in the United States. Now, Canadian employers might look a little bit, there's always a preference for Canadian work experience, and then people in Canada understand the US environment a little bit better, so they might look at that more favorably. But for immigration purposes, the work experience can be obtained anywhere in the world. What's the acceptance rate for a student with only a bachelor's degree from the United States? So it doesn't matter where the bachelor's degree is from. However, with just a bachelor's degree and the minimum amount of working experience, you probably will not obtain the minimum amount of points to receive an invitation to apply. However, if you have more work experience, it depends on your personal situation. As I mentioned, there's a variety of ways you can obtain the CRS points. However, if you have no relatives in Canada, no work experience in Canada, no study experience in Canada, and all you have is English abilities, you need to usually have a master's degree and maybe 2 years of work experience in order to receive an invitation to apply. So would a legal articling apprenticeship count as a professional job offer? I assume that would be paid employment, and it would be skilled work experience. So if it's a paid job offer and it's been approved by the Canadian government, then yes, it would qualify. Do certain industries get preference? No, certain industries do not get preference, but provincial nominee programs may give preference to, some of them do give preference to certain industries because that's where the local labor needs are. What happens if more people in a year apply than what your target is? So with the express entry, we always have a larger pool of candidates than we do people that will be able to immigrate to Canada. So that's why we have this system of drawing the top ranking candidates and then inviting them to apply for immigration. So we only issue enough invitations to fill the target for that year. So we never have more applications than the target, but we will have more candidates in the pool who wish to apply to immigrate to Canada than who will be able to. Okay, so again, if you're applying as a PhD student, you need to have the PhD before you can say that you have a PhD. So you can apply with your master's degree and get points for that. But once you get your PhD, once you obtain the degree, then you can update your profile and add the PhD. Yes, so if the validity of your English test expires while you are still in the pool, yes, you will have to take the test over. So your test at the time of application, that's when you fill the whole application kit and submit it, that needs to be less than 2 years old at that time. Would a Juris Doctor degree be the equivalent of a PhD or a master's? Good question. I assume that it would be equivalent to a PhD. That would be up to your education credential assessment. The credential assessment would clearly state what level it's equivalent to. Hi, I've heard that there is no job invitation needed for a specific province of Canada. Is that true? So you don't have to have a job offer to go through the federal program. If you are applying for provincial nomination, each province has their own program. Some of them require that you have a job offer. Some require other things. So that depends on the province. I will have 2 years work experience prior having to 2-year GTA. So
do you want me to read the full question, or do you have it?
Sure. Well, after, how can it be combined?
So will having 2 years of work experience prior to having 2 years of GTA, graduate teaching experience at KU, all count as 3 or more? And how can it be combined during the application?
So when you are filling out your profile, it takes quite a long time. I've heard up to 6 hours, but you have to list all your employment experience and the time and whether it was full-time. So once you have the minimum of 1 year of full-time work experience or the same 1,560 hours over a 2-year period, after that, all your extra work period would be counted by month and give you additional points. So on your application, you're going to list everything. And then we're going to get a total number of years and months of work experience for you. And then that would be used to calculate your points. Would 2 MS degrees score higher than 1 MS degree? No. If I entered the pool and I get married and I update my profile, it's cut off after that.
If I entered the pool in July, got married in August, update my profile of being married in, say, March the following year, would that affect my application negatively?
It could. but it also could affect your application positively. So if you get married, you need to update your profile, because if your profile when you're invited to apply is incorrect, you will likely be refused. So your profile needs to be correct. You need to update it. And if your spouse has English or French language capacities, you want them to get them tested. If they have education, you want to get an education credential assessment, and all those factors can then improve your score. However, if you decide not to undergo testing, then being married could actually decrease your score.
Here's another long one. Does PMP also work based on the score in targeted jobs, or do they handpick? I had points above the threshold once, but I wasn't sent an invitation for PMP Ontario.
So that's up to the province, and each province has their own programs. But each province has a target. So even if you were above the points for the threshold, it may be that they had already met the target at that time. Most of them operate similarly to Express Entry, where they will pick the top ranking candidates, and it's not based on they wouldn't handpick in those cases. It would be based on your points. But I can't say for sure about the provincial programs, because each one's different. There's 13 different provinces and territories. I'm not sure what CEA is. That CEC, the Express Entry Program? That's an Express Entry program. Canadian Experience Class is an Express Entry program. And one thing I forgot to mention is the reason why it's called Express Entry is because when we receive your application, unless your application has some complicating factors where it falls out of standard processing, for 80% of applications, we process them within 6 months. So that's the express part of Express Entry. Which evaluation agency is the most preferred for degrees obtained in the United States? We have agencies that we have authorized, but we don't recommend one above another. There are certain agencies that specialize in certain professional degrees, but other than that, you can pick whichever one that you want. So how can you get a province to nominate you? If you or they are the ones responsible for reaching out to you. So if you're interested in, if you know for sure you want to go to the province of Ontario, go to the province of Ontario website. The provinces will have an immigration site, and look into their Express Entry programs, and some of them you can apply directly to. Some you cannot, and it's by invitation only. Okay, so if I get a PhD in engineering, do I need to submit a standardized test like IELTS or TOEFL? Everyone has to submit language testing, and TOEFL is not one of the accepted tests. It's IELTS or the Canadian English Language Proficiency Index. Okay, so how much time does the whole process take? Depends on what S score is. So if you have an amazing CRS score, you could be invited next week. And then you would have 60 days normally to apply. Right now it's been extended to 90, but normally up to 2 months to apply. So once you submit your application, then the majority of applications, 80%, are processed within 6 months or less. So depending on what your score is and how quickly you are invited to apply, the process can move quite quickly. Okay, so can you talk about the level of French required to qualify? I haven't taken these particular tests in French. like IELTS, there's basic, intermediate, and advanced levels. And that I believe you have to have we have something called Canadian language benchmarks. And each test, because each test has its own way of scoring, but we have on our website a chart of what the scores are required in each test to get a certain level in the Canadian language benchmark. So Canadian language benchmarks, I believe, go from 1 to 10. I think you need a 5 in order to get marks in French, which would be intermediate. The language test is required when you submit your Express Entry profile, because otherwise we won't be able to award you the points for your language ability.
I think that is all the questions. If I missed any, Wendy Shoemaker from KU Career Services did provide links and contact information in the chat. So if you have additional questions, you guys can get in touch with us that way. And then we'll follow back up with Jennifer to get answers for those.
Great. And thank you very much for everyone for attending and all your questions. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. This was wonderful.
Oh, thank you very much. All right. Well, everyone, please stay safe and good luck. And yeah, I hope to see you in Canada sometime.
You take care too.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.